From jaw-dropping royal feasts to mindful spiritual meals, Indian cuisine is like an art gallery of flavors, textures, and stories. They say the next best thing to eating food is savoring the tales behind it. So, here we are. I'm your host Ankita, and you are listening to Beyond Butter Chicken.
Hey everyone, welcome back. This is our fourth episode of the season, and trust me, it's a good one. Today we are diving into the delicious world of global curries, exploring the rich aromatic curries that you can find in different corners of the world. Honestly, scripting this episode was such a blast. I had the chance to interview a ton of interesting people, and let me tell you, there is nothing like connecting with fellow food nerds who geek out over the history and culture behind what we eat. I even made a few new friends along the way. There's something really special about meeting folks who share your passion, right? In this episode, we are taking you on a journey through the most popular curries from Japan, Indonesia, Thailand, West Africa, the Caribbean, like Jamaica, Trinidad, Guyana, Fiji, and of course, we can't forget the English and French influences. After all, they played a big part in kicking off this whole curry saga. So, what's the deal with curry's global spread? Let's take a look at that. There are three key components to how Indian cooking, especially curry, made its way around the world. First up, we've got to give credit to Indian indentured laborers. They were the ones who carried Indian food and cooking traditions to the far-flung places that they were taken to. Indians have always been proud of their food and their culture, and that pride traveled with them. Even today, you see it in the vibrant food scenes of places like South Africa, Mauritius, Guyana, Trinidad, Jamaica, Fiji. Lizzie Collingham makes a fascinating point here. On their voyage to the New World, these laborers left behind some of their cultural and caste restrictions. Everyone ate from the same pot, drank from the same source, and once these barriers were broken, they did not appear in their new homes in the New World. Within their communities, everyone was truly equal. Next, we have got the British colonies to thank, where there was no indentured labor. For instance, in Japan, British ships introduced curry powder and cooking techniques, and the Japanese took it from there. We'll get into that a bit later. Lastly, Indian merchants and traders played a huge role in spreading culinary culture, especially in Southeast Asia. They brought Indian flavors to places like Malaysia and Indonesia, where curry met with local ingredients like star anise, galangal, kaffir lime, lemongrass, fish sauce, shrimp paste, so on and so forth. Let's kick things off by talking about the so-called inventors of curry, the British. The British curry, or more specifically the English curry, was one of the many things the officers of East India Company took back home with them. Picture this. It's the late 17th century, and these officers are stationed across India. They embraced the local lifestyle, ditching the stiff suit and tie for a more climate-appropriate Indian attire, and it did not stop there. They developed a taste for Indian food thanks to the local chefs they had hired. Some of them even married to Indian women and had families there. Here's a fun tidbit I came across in Lizzie Collingham's book, Curry. Veerswamy is the longest-running Indian restaurant in England since 1926. It was started by a gentleman named Edward Palmer, who named it after his grandfather's wife. How cool is that? Now, when these officers retired and returned to England, they were dubbed Nawabs, a twist on the Indian word Nawab. Nawab meaning a governor or a nobleman. Along with their exotic stories and attire, they brought back a love for Indian food. And while in India, they coined the term curry to describe the local cuisine. We went into detail on that in our last episode. Some of these officers even managed to bring back their Indian chefs with them, of course if they could afford it. But here's the kicker. Replicating the authentic Indian flavors back in England was no easy feat. The ingredients they loved in India, like tamarind for that tangy kick, or freshly squeezed coconut milk for richness, and the browned onions pureed with nuts for that thick, nutty, caramel like flavor. All these things weren't exactly available at the local market in England. So, what did they do? They improvised.
Tamarind got swapped with lemon juice.
Ghee was replaced by butter or oil. Raisins were subbed out for apples. Flour was used to thicken the sauce. And instead of fresh, creamy coconut milk, they had to make do with the watery packaged stuff. And let's not forget the spices. Instead of toasting and grinding fresh spices, they came up with a one-size-fits-all kind of solution, which they called it curry powder. This is how the classic English curry was born. It typically featured a choice of protein, lamb or chicken, along with carrots, celery, onions, and maybe some potatoes, corn, or peas. Throw in some chopped apples, a splash of coconut or cow milk, and a thickening of flour, and you've got yourself a hearty stew, finished with a squeeze of lemon. This was the curry that graced aristocratic dinner tables and eventually made its way to the middle class. Now, let's be real. This would never pass for a curry in India. But hey, it was their take on Indian cuisine and it became a hit in its own right. I actually whipped up this recipe at one of my cooking classes, and let me tell you, it was a crowd pleaser. Some folks even called it a spice stew. Well, actually, it is a spice stew, right? It's often served with rice, but works just as well with a dinner roll. The best part, it's quick and easy to make, unlike most Indian dishes that involve a lot of sautéing and blending and marinating and the slow cooking. British curry is more of a quick fix. You can switch up the veggies and the protein, and you're good to go. This recipe, by the way, comes from The Curry, A Global History by Colleen Taylor Sen. It was such a hit that people were asking for seconds, and one person even snuck behind the counter to scrape out whatever was left in the pot. But that's a story for another time.
Moving on to French curry. Let's dive into how the French put their own spin on this global dish. French curry, particularly the spice blend known as Vadouvan, is closely tied to English curry but has roots in French colonial India. It all started with François Martin de Vitry, the first Frenchman to document his travels to the Far East back in 1604, on the orders of Henry IV. His writings sparked a strong interest in Asia, leading to the creation of French East India Company in 1664, which was modeled after its English and Dutch counterparts to compete for the trade in East, obviously. The French established colonies in places like Pondicherry, Tamil Nadu, and other coastal cities in India. Even today, you can spot French influences in the culture, architecture, and food of these regions. Vadouvan, for instance, is a refined version of the South Indian spice mix balls called vadagam. These were small, hand-rolled balls made from a mix of fresh herbs and dried spices and aromatics, all dried under the sun and preserved with oil and salt. French chefs took this traditional mix and gave it a European twist, creating vadouvan. The blend typically includes onions, garlic, coriander, cumin, mustard, and fenugreek, but also incorporates French herbs like thyme and oregano, making it a perfect example of French fusion cuisine. Now, while French colonization mainly focused on the Americas and Asia, the French also established colonies and trading posts in Africa. Early French colonization in Africa began in modern-day Senegal, Madagascar, and Mascarene Islands. The French East India Company prioritized plantation economies and slave labor, particularly focusing on controlling seaports and extracting enslaved people for profit. French influence expanded to East African islands like Reunion, Mauritius, Rodrigues, Reunion Island, first settled in 1642, came under the direct administration of French East India Company in 1665. Later, France took control of Mauritius, which was renamed Isle de France in 1721, and Rodriguez in 1735, followed by Seychelles in 1756. On Reunion Island, also known as Bourbon Island, the French East India Company introduced the slave trade in the 1730s and established a plantation economy centered around forced labor, particularly in coffee production. Between 1721 and 1810, at least 12,000 workers from various parts of India, like Pondicherry, Bihar, Bengal, arrived on the island. Although many were skilled workers like stonemasons and carpenters, hundreds of them were enslaved. After legislative changes in 1767, these Indian immigrants were allowed to start businesses, buy land, and also own their own slaves. However, after the British invaded in 1810 and took control, the island's dynamics shifted. The liberation of about 65,000 African and Malagasy slaves following the 1833 abolition of slavery forced the Franco-Mauritian plantation owners to turn to indentured laborers, or coolies as they were called, from India to work their fields. Between 1834 and 1920, nearly 700,000 Indian indentured laborers arrived at Aparavasi Ghat, a harbor in Port Louis, making Mauritius the largest recipient of indentured migrants in the British colony. Aparavasi Ghat is a World Heritage Site, the kind that gives you goosebumps. Most of these laborers were from Bhojpuri-speaking regions like Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, along with significant others that were Tamils and Telugus and Marathis as well. Today, their descendants make up to 2/3 of Mauritius's population. This influx of Indian laborers brought Indian cuisine to these islands, where it blended with French culinary influences to create a unique style of curry. French-influenced curries can be found in places like Madagascar, Mauritius, Seychelles, and Reunion Island. Reunionese dishes like kari poulet, sausage rougel, or masale are prime examples. Masale is a spice blend similar to garam masala with no single perfect recipe. It often combines Indian spices like turmeric, cumin, coriander, fenugreek, mustard, cardamom, nutmeg, cinnamon, along with European influences like oregano and thyme, summer savory, and even saffron. Masale is typically used in meat dishes, such as goat masale or poulet, that's chicken masale, where the spice blend is mixed with onions and garlic and tomatoes to create a rich sauce. On the other hand, Mauritian curry often includes potatoes, curry powder, and a touch of thyme with saffron sometimes added for an extra depth. After discussing the East African islands, let's dive deeper into the culinary landscape of Southern and Western Africa. Historically, trade relations flourished between the western coast of India and eastern coast of Africa. Archaeological evidence speaks volumes about this extensive trade network, which stretched even further towards the Malacca Islands in Southeast Asia. Spices were a key commodity that were traded through the port of Cambay or the Gulf of Khambat in Gujarat. It is highly likely that Indian sailors brought their food and culinary practices to the eastern coast of Africa. For a detailed exploration on this topic, Neville Chittick's paper on India-Africa trade relations before the arrival of Portuguese is a fascinating read. It is available online on JSTOR. I'm not sure how to say that. JSTOR, Jester, but it's a free website, and you just have to sign up and you will have access to lots and lots of information there. Given this long history of trade, it's challenging to pinpoint exactly when and how food culture in the region was influenced by these interactions. And let's not forget the significant impact of Arab traders who, for similar trade reasons, left their mark on southern and eastern Africa. These regions have always been cultural crossroads influenced by various seafaring communities. Fast forward to the late 19th and 20th centuries. We see another wave of Indian influence with the arrival of Banias, a group of Indian traders who began immigrating to Africa. They were a part of a larger movement of Indian immigrants drawn to various parts of Africa, including East Africa during the colonial time, seeking opportunities in trade, agriculture, and other economic activities. Now let's jump ahead to the 1950s during the apartheid era. During the oppressive apartheid laws, it was illegal to serve black Africans in restaurants or any food establishments that catered to the white minority. To get around these restrictions, the restaurants began smuggling curry stuffed inside hollowed out bread loaves, which could be eaten without utensils. Some stories say these curries were handed out the back door, while others suggest it was a way to distribute the leftovers at the end of the day. The term bunny is thought to be a rough transformation of the word banya, leading to the now famous dish known as bunny chow, which essentially means Indian food. Bunny was the South African word for Indian, which came from the word banya. Besides bunny chow, another popular dish is bobotai, a South African casserole where ground meat is spiced with curry powder before being baked.
In East Africa, curry also made its mark. There's Kenyan curry, Zanzibar curry, each with its unique twists and secrets. Most of these dishes use individual spices, onions, garlic, coriander leaves, and sometimes also a blend of spices like garam masala or even curry powder. Some of the standout dishes are makai paka or kuku paka, where paka translates to curry. Moving on to West African curries, let's take a look at that. Peanut or groundnut curry. This rich, creamy curry is made with ground peanuts or peanut butter, which gives it a distinctive nutty flavor. It's often cooked with chicken, beef, or vegetables and can include ingredients like tomatoes, onions, and spices like ginger, garlic, and peppers. This dish is popular in several West African countries, including Nigeria, Ghana, and Senegal. Each region may have its own variation, but the base use of peanuts is a common feature.
Now let's explore Caribbean curries, particularly from Trinidad, Guyana, Jamaica, and St. Lucia. We are talking about aloo pie, dal puri, curry bodi, curry aloo, curry chicken, crab curry, conch curry. The list just goes on and on. When Indian indentured laborers began their new lives on these islands, they were given a limited stock of familiar ingredients like rice, wheat flour, split dal, and turmeric. With resourcefulness and a bit of creativity, they adapted their cooking styles to the ingredients that were available locally. Yellow peas from Canada became a substitute for the dals that they were accustomed to in India. And for their essential heat, they turned to fiery Scotch bonnet peppers. What gives Caribbean Indian food its distinctive flavor is the fusion of these Scotch bonnets with roasted cumin, sometimes chives, parsley, which were introduced by Europeans. In Jamaica, the influence of Indian cooking is evident in dishes like goat curry. Jamaican curry powder often includes pimento, which is a spice very similar to allspice, which has a clove-like flavor. Jerk seasoning, on the other hand, reflects a Chinese influence, particularly with the use of five-spice powder. As Carolyn Cooper, a notable Jamaican literary scholar, explains, jerk is one of the enduring legacies of the fusion of African and Taino cultures in Jamaica. The Taino were among the Caribbean's indigenous populations, and Cooper adds that archaeological evidence shows that Maroons who resisted enslavement and claimed freedom in the mountains of the island settled among the indigenous people who survived the trauma of discovery, in air quotes. They shared culinary traditions, among which was jerk. One of the most beloved street foods in Trinidad is doubles. It is a fried bread topped with peas curry, often served with cuchella, which is a hot relish or a preserve that sometimes doubles as a fresh salsa made with cucumbers. Other Caribbean dishes with Indian influence include pillau rice, roti, which is a food wrapped in bread and baked, basapshat roti, which is a flaky, torn-up style roti. As a fun fact, basapshat comes from the term busted up shirt. If you say busted up shirt in the island accent, it becomes basapshat. Dosti roti, which is a soft layered roti. It is made by rolling out a flatbread or a roti, and then you add some kind of fat, usually ghee in between, and then another roti is placed on top, sort of like a sandwich, and because the two of them go together, it's called dosti roti, and dosti in Hindi means friendship. Then there is dal puri, which is a roti stuffed with ground split peas, and then doubles that we talked about earlier. Now let's talk about Fiji. When Indian indentured laborers arrived in Fiji in the late 1800s, they brought with them the culinary traditions of their homeland. Over time, these recipes, fused with local Fijian ingredients and techniques, created a unique style of curry that is distinctly Fijian. In Fiji, you'll encounter a wide range of curries like chicken curry, fish curry, lamb, goat. Even dal curry is made with lentils. What makes Fijian curry special is the island twist. They often add coconut milk that replaces the more traditional yogurt or cream, adding a subtle sweetness and richness that's uniquely tropical. Spices like cumin, coriander, turmeric, and fenugreek are staples again, but they're often combined with local ingredients like fresh ginger garlic and chilies that are grown locally there, which create a more vibrant flavor in their food. One fascinating aspect of Fijian curry is the way it has become a fusion of Indian and Fijian food cultures. For example, I'm not sure if I'm saying this right, it's ruru curry, which is made using taro leaves, a staple in Fijian cuisine, but cooked with Indian spices, blending the best of both worlds. Another popular dish is cassava curry, where the starchy root vegetable, which is a common Fijian ingredient, is simmered in coconut milk and spices.
Alright, so far we have explored the English curry, that's the classic British favorite. Then we moved through French-style curries and their influence on the East African islands. We also touched upon the vibrant curries of West and Southern Africa. And we talked about the Caribbean curries and also Fiji. This topic of international curries is wonderfully vast, so I'm splitting it into two parts. So essentially, we have curry part 1, where we talked about the curries from Indian subcontinent. This episode was curry part 2, where we talked about a few international curries. And in the next episode, we will continue our journey through Southeast Asia and beyond, discovering even more fascinating flavors and stories. Until then, stay hungry, stay curious. You're listening to Beyond Butter Chicken.